Hello my friends, how are you? Sean Ferrick here for Whatculture, and I am absolutely delighted to be welcoming you to our new series, which is all of the ups and downs for the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power. Now, this is a series that I personally have really fought to get made because I have been a Lord of the Rings fan since 2001, since the release of the Peter Jackson trilogy. It introduced me to the wonderful world of Middle-earth. I then dived into the books. I've dived into the recent audiobooks. If you haven't had a chance, Andy Serkis has just recorded and released The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. I thoroughly recommend a listen, but that's not exactly what I'm here to talk about today. The new Amazon series, it's just dropped and I have so many things to say which I will go into in the video, but this, my initial reaction to the pilot, A Shadow of the Past. Spoiler, it's good. Now, obviously, if you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, what the bloody hell are you doing watching this video? Go away, hit pause and come back when you're done. But if you are here, I'm assuming you have seen it, and I am dying to hear your thoughts as well. So please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. This is a series that is going to live and die on the views and the interaction. So please, I beg of you, make sure that you get the word out there and make sure that you tell everyone that we're here. If you are familiar with the ups and downs, you know how this is going to work. We're going to go through the episode to take everything that we liked and give it an up, and everything that we didn't like, and we're going to give it a down. With that in mind, let's get going. We are going to start straight away with an up for this episode, and that up is Galadriel. All of those familiar with The Lord of the Rings will know that Galadriel is a high elf. She is full of mystery, she is full of control, and she is full of intrigue. That's not this character. This character, we chart Galadriel from her childhood to an elven version of young adult adolescence. That control is very much still there, but it just comes across in a different form. This Galadriel is slightly more single-minded because though in the beginning she is a willful elfin child, just like anyone else, she is quickly overcome with the obsession of the hunt for Sauron. Now, there is that stunning depiction of the fall of Valinor in the beginning of the episode, which leads, most sadly, to the death of her brother after he goes in search of Sauron as well. She takes up his mantle, and then the beginning of the episode becomes a depiction of her leading forces to hunt for Sauron, who has of course survived and is still out there and is with his orcs somewhere. Now, this version of Middle-earth is very different from the one that we're used to, because this is one that has lived for quite a long time in peace. In fact, so long that people like Galadriel are starting to be seen as fanatics because, well, their time has passed. You know, we live in this wonderful age of wonderment, and you're not still going on about Sauron, are you? It's very well done, it's very well handled, because we as an audience, we know, of course, Sauron is still out there. It's depicted in such a way that we understand why the people of Middle-earth maybe don't believe so much in Sauron anymore. It has been eons, and those who still have living memory of what happened are becoming fewer and fewer and further apart. Now, there are those who have their own political reasons for keeping people like Galadriel away from the main masses. She is an example of a character who is single-minded and yet not one-dimensional. So as our protagonist for this season, as she is being set up to be, even though I will say excellent depiction of an ensemble in the pilot, Galadriel straight away is a compelling character to watch. We know where she's going to end up. So seeing this version of her in the beginning, for me, was a complete win this week. The second up of the week goes to the musical score. The main theme was composed by Howard Shore, returning, of course, from the Peter Jackson sextology, the Lord of the Rings, and of course the Hobbit trilogies. Although he is not the main composer for the series, his influence can be felt throughout. Bear McCreary, who has just consistently impressed in every project I've seen him attached to. I first heard his music in Battlestar Galactica, and then of course through his work on the Outlander series and many, many others. I love what they've done with the musical soundscape of this episode, because it is both a thematic continuation of what we've heard earlier with Howard Shore's main score, and a new direction, something slightly more pastoral, but also that power is still there. It is just, we very, very much like. Now, I'm slightly biased because I have loved Howard Shore and Bear McCreary probably for about 20 years each. So having them come together in this was kind of like a little special birthday present for me. Very, very much appreciated. The third up of the episode is going to the visuals. This entire up was going to go to the Fall of Valinor to begin with, which is just mind-blowingly beautiful. Production designer Ramsey Avery put together a team of well over 100 VFX artists to work on this series, and you can see it because there's the big computer-generated scenes which are stunning, including the battles for Middle Earth, and then things like Fodder Waste, the Northern Wastes, that, you know, things like that, but also simpler things like the Harfoot's Realm, or Lindon. I say simpler, I mean, you know, less CGI heavy. It's stunning. I mean, this is a beautiful looking episode. If this is indicative of the season to follow, which, I mean, I think it's a fairly safe bet to say that it is, I'm going to have to stop myself from just upping the visuals every single week. I say that now, I may not stop myself. I may just be like, yeah, visuals, taken up. You can see straight away the legacy of John Howe and Alan Lee's designs from Peter Jackson's trilogy, and I think let's just be ready now. The phrase "from Peter Jackson's trilogy" is probably going to be used quite a lot in these ups and downs episodes, because what will happen is that while this show will of course make its own statements and it will become its own point of reference as a pilot episode, all we can really do is go, I recognize that, I see that, I know where that's from. That's fine. They're doing the clever thing of they're not shying away from that. I think it's a strength of this episode. It is something that, had they tried to do something drastically different, I think people would have reacted quite badly to that. Not that, you know, Middle-earth can only be depicted one way. And I stress to say that one version of the visuals of a fantasy world should not be the only version. Having said that, I think they did it so well initially that it was clever to continue that. For those of you out there who are going, well, what about Ralph Bakshi's version? That came before. You're right. And no one can ever take that away from you. The next up is the reveal of Angmar. It is very, very tense because the only character that we know in this scene is walking out of this scene is Galadriel. And the other elves, while we don't get an awful lot of time with them, I don't want them to die. So when we see them battling against all of the wind and the sleet and the rain, and then you get that one light of what looks like a collapsed watchtower, and then behind them another collapsed watchtower, and then they look up and there is the ruins of that old castle. That is a moment, walking inside and seeing what appears to be, you know, the remnants of a smith, and you've got orcs baked into the wall, and, you know, we kind of know what might have been happening here, or at least what experiments were happening here. There is the reveal here of Sauron's mark on, you know, on the blacksmith's table. We obviously first saw it on the body of Galadriel's brother. I do like this inclusion because this was something that is new to the Rings of Power, and I buy it straight away. It seems to be sort of a spiritual sequel, or prequel if you like, to The Eye of Sauron, and I am so here for it. That reveal of the mark of Sauron was, well, it was quite, I had tingles running down my spine. There is a down in this scene. There is the reveal of a snow troll, which itself is quite an imposing design. Any characters who are imbued with so much power from the beginning to then basically be redshirted is quite frustrating. Now, I stress to say, none of them are killed in this scene, and it's not as if an elf can't take a punch, but it did sort of seem as though these all-powerful hunter beings were very much blindsided by a troll who would not be well known for their stealth. I think that is a problem that any version of elves face. Certainly that problem was in, say it with me, the Peter Jackson trilogy. For example, I'm thinking very much of the elves that went to Helm's Deep, who were the ultimate warriors and then became fodder. And there was a little bit of that in this scene, so unfortunately it just stood out a little bit for me here. And actually, I'm gonna go one more. Another down for this episode is that sort of infighting, we should never have come here, and they sort of mutiny against Galadriel. Now, there is a reveal later on in the episode that this mutiny is not so much we're gonna fight you with our swords, as opposed to, we're done now, we're going home. The depiction of it here, it was a bit like, really? You've come this far. Yes, okay, there is we've come this far, can we please go home now? My feet are tired. And in fact, one of the guys goes, I can't feel anything in my fingers. Now, they do explain it's because we come so far north that, fire has no burn here. It's like, yeah, or he's got frostbite. These are also issues. For me, I just thought it was a tiny little bit rushed. It's a minor down, I must say. But yeah, for me, it was like, okay. I will say, even though this is a down, I do like that it didn't become a violent standoff. And that I do think is a strength to the episode as well. So yes, I thought it was a little bit of a down that, we're all taking out our swords and putting them down, and no, we're going home. So you might have mentioned that before climbing the glacier, but still. Now, back to positivity. Up, the reveal of the Harfoots. Oh, I love them. See, one of my favourite parts of the world of Middle-earth is, of course, the Halflings. The Harfoots here are depicted exactly the way you'd want to. Now, I love the fact that they're all hiding and how quickly they all come back out again. That I loved, and it really kind of ties in so far. We'll have to see, of course, where it goes in the series, but at this point in Middle-earth history, they weren't really that well known. So having them exist so close beside other characters and yet completely of their own, thumbs up for me. Loved that reveal. And also, Lenny Henry just brings me joy. However, as an Irishman, I have to down some of those accents. I'm sorry. A little bit ropey, some of them. Up, Elrond. Elrond being such a familiar character to anyone who is familiar with Lord of the Rings, this was always going to be a bit of a challenge. And this is a very different Elrond to what we've seen before. We were introduced to a seasoned warrior, Elrond, who has become slightly higher elf, lots of wisdom, all that lovely stuff. Here, this is a much younger Elrond, a much more political Elrond, one who we see is unsure enough of himself to cross out words in his speech writing. And I thought I really liked that. As a writer myself, I'm like, oh yes, I recognize that. That for me helps to explain why Elrond is so placating of Galadriel. Galadriel is quite single-minded, as I've discussed, whereas Elrond is seeing the bigger picture. As it's revealed, the bigger picture, often you're seeing the wood for the trees. We need a bit of a mid-ground, which is clearly where we're going to head toward with this series. But I loved this depiction of the character because he's younger, he doesn't quite have the authority that he's going to end up having, and he hasn't been through the battles that we know he's going to go through. It's more easily understandable why he goes along with Gil-galad's, basically banishment of Galadriel in this episode. It was a great introduction to reintroduction to a character we already know so well, and it opens up a door. It doesn't shock you to the point where it's just like, oh, well, Elrond wouldn't do that. Actually, it goes, because of this, I understand why Elrond did that. And that is a mark of good writing in my mind. While there are many fantastic lines in this episode in the script, there's one I particularly want to highlight. Their songs would mock the cries of battle in my ears. I thought that was powerful. So this entire scene, this reward that Galadriel and her company are receiving from Gil-galad to, yes, you can go to the Grey Havens, everything's wonderful, you can head back to Valinor, yay, well done everyone. This is a banishment. This is clearly, we need to get rid of these people who are so single-minded that they might bring discontent into the kingdom. There's so many examples throughout literature of the reward which is actually a punishment, and that's what this is. And Galadriel, she sees it for what it is. The rest of her company, while not blaming them, they're tired, they want to rest, and their will to rest is a little bit stronger than their will to see what's going on around them. Galadriel makes the statement of course I could go and rest, but how could I rest knowing that the fight is still going on? Now, we might be existing in a land of peace right now, but the elves being as long-lived as they are, I mean, this is a drop in a bucket for them. And so I thought that was such a powerful line. Their songs would mock the cries of battle in my ears. The job's not done, so why would I take the day off? Really, really strong message here in this episode. The next up, we head toward the Southlands and we meet Rhondir and Bronwyn. Now, Rhondir and Bronwyn seem to be set up to be a flipped version of the Aragorn and Arwen of this series. Now, obviously in the Aragorn and Arwen stories, Arwen was the elf, Aragorn was the human, and it's flipped over here. They are clearly in love. It's clearly a little bit of it seems to be a known secret that the two of them are having an affair. Certainly the other elves, or at least one or two of them, know that Arondir has such feelings for Bronwyn. There is your kind of standard racism between humans and elves, and I like that it's sort of, it's addressed in episode 1, but we don't linger on it. Obviously, we could sit here and we could discuss the absolutely foul outcry that came once there was a reveal of people of colour were going to be in this version of Lord of the Rings. I intend to give that as little time as the episode gives to the racism that's on show here. It's stupid, it's narrow-minded, and quite frankly, it's childish. That's how it's depicted in the episode, and basically the grown-ups don't give it much time. And I like how that's handled. Arondir doesn't rise to the bait. And that is crucial in understanding the power in his character as well. If Rhondir and Bronwyn were trying to keep it secret, I mean, now they need to know class and secrecy, I must say, because, kind of, the only thing they don't do is, get married in the middle of the village. And that's fine. I mean, that's fine. How many love stories are like that? Oh my God, it's totally a secret. No one thought it was a secret. Yeah, okay, fair. I'm going to have a down here, but this down I'm going to leave as a kind of a maybe down. Bronwyn's child, who has long hair covering their ears, if the big reveal is that he's got pointed ears, I mean, surely somebody noticed before this. His daddy ran off. I mean, his dad is clearly a Rhondir. Now, this could be a bait and switch. That's what I mean by this being a maybe down. This could be a bait and switch. But, I mean, clearly he's the child of Bronwyn and Arondir, because of course he is. I did vaguely like him though. I do like that reveal of, I'm assuming it's a Morgul blade or something similar to it. Obviously clearly has the mark of Sauron on it. Seems to call to Galadriel across the Sundering Sea, enough for her to jump off that boat, which that's depicted very much like a death for these elves, even though I suppose technically that is what going to the land beyond the sea is, going to the undying lands. Basically, it's sort of suggested that once you go there, it's like, I ain't seeing you again. That's certainly how it's presented in The Lord of the Rings. We have an instant up, ents. I see ents, I up them. Simple as. Now, the final up of the episode goes to that final shot. That image of Sauron lying on the ground in this beautiful crater of fire, very much evoking a biblical imagery of Lucifer, the fallen angel, which of course is one of the inspirations behind Sauron in The Lord of the Rings. As Nori walks up and we're screaming, Nori, get the hell out of there, you don't want to be there, and finds Sauron, it is a powerful image. Now, my curiosity is left at, where was Sauron? How come Sauron had to appear back in a fireball? You know, was there some sort of giant catapult that just flung him across Middle-earth? And if it is, it sort of robs the grandeur of the scene, so hopefully there's another story. This was a type of pilot that left me with enough questions that I'm so interested to see where it goes. It's got enough nods to Lord of the Rings lore where I'm like, okay, yes, I recognize that. Yes, I recognize that. It's also striking out in its own new story. I don't get hard prequel feelings from this, and that I very much like. So that is everything for our episode today, folks. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. As I said already, this is a series that is being made with the passion of people behind it. So please, liking, sharing, and subscribing is what is going to make this series continue. We have massive plans when it comes to things like fantasy shows in general. And on that, please make sure you join us next week for the ups and downs for House of the Dragon, which we will be beginning next week. In the meantime, make sure you look after yourselves. You can catch us over on Twitter at Whatculture. You can catch myself at Sean Ferrick. And don't forget to check out our various sub-channels as well. You're all wonderful. Stay safe. Stay strong. Our friends in Ukraine, likewise, stay safe. We're thinking of you. Everyone, I will see you for episode 2. Thank you so much for joining. You're all awesome.